Alright, welcome back to Econ. This is Dr. Kling's class, and we're on to lesson number 7, a basic concept in economics called factors of production. And the typical factors of production are labor, land, and capital. And we'll just use a number of examples to illustrate how that works. So let's say the activity we're talking about is I decide I'm going to bake some bread. So bake bread. And so I clear off the kitchen table, set up some bowls and some forks and spoons to stir things with. Take out some flour, eggs, yeast, what have you. Preheat the oven, and then I go to work mixing stuff and kneading the bread and kneading the dough and everything, and put it in the oven. You know the whole story. And baking bread. Okay, so let's start with the land. The land I'm using, I'll just say, you could say it's sort of my kitchen table, although the table actually is capital. So the land is sort of the land under my house. So the land under my house, or under the kitchen. The table is capital. Actually, the house itself is capital, so the kitchen is capital. Maybe I'd better stop here and talk about capital, because the way you've probably heard about capital is you probably heard about capital as financial capital. So somebody who has a lot of capital has a big bank account. That's probably the way you've heard about it. Or an entrepreneur says, I need capital to start my business. That means he needs financial capital. But in economics, there's another form of capital, and the one which I might call, let's spell it right, physical capital. And what that is long-lived structures like factories and equipment. So things that last a long time. So back to my bed breaking, well, the table is a long-lived thing. The kitchen itself, the building, is a long-lived physical capital. And then the bowls might be considered capital. Any implements like spoons and so on. The oven would be a classic type of capital, so a capital good, so on. So those are examples of capital. And then the labor is sort of my work. So my work is I mix the ingredients, knead the dough, put it in the oven, watch it, take it out of the oven, and all that stuff. So that's your labor, land, and capital. And these are all what I would call tangible factors of production. I'm going to put tangible up here. Tangible factors of production. Now, what about things like, so we sort of made it sound like if these are the factors of production and what we get out of it is bread, what we're making it sound like is that if you put in some labor, some land, and some capital, out comes bread. Well, what's missing in this story? We're missing certainly the ingredients. What do we do with things like, the flour the eggs, the yeast. Okay, if we were modeling this as a business, these would be called materials. That is, they were materials that we purchase for the business and then make into something else. But from an economic perspective, we would ask, well, where did these materials come from? And it turns out they, in turn, required labor, land, and capital. So these materials required labor, land, and capital. Okay, the eggs required land to have a chicken farm, labor to take care of the chickens and to take the eggs, and capital in form of the pens to hold the chickens and all that kind of stuff. So ultimately, the materials required labor, land, and capital. And so that's the sense in which an economist would say that the final output really comes from labor, land, and capital. Some of the labor and land and capital was used to produce the ingredients, which we purchased, the materials, and then some of the labor, land, and capital was actually used when we baked the bread. So the fundamentals, we think, are this labor, land, and capital. Now, so there's something else that's needed in this whole process of bread baking, and that is a recipe. And that's something that doesn't fit into this factors of production concept at all. It's too intangible. But it's important. It's just something that we tend to skip over in an economics class. So we tend to focus on intangible factors. And maybe I'm emphasizing the intangible recipe because I happen to have a book with a co-author named Nick Schultz. The books had various titles, so I think it came out under one title. Hang on 1 second. Okay, here it is. Here's the paperback version. It's called Invisible Wealth. Alright, so and we talk about these intangible factors, the recipes and so on. Alright, so let's do some other examples of the standard factors of production. So let's put those back up there really quickly. Remember, labor, land, and capital. So I've had students sometimes try to model simple strip mall businesses. One of them they modeled was a video game arcade. So video, not video, video game arcade. Okay, so what would be the labor in there? Well, you might have a manager, and you might have a cashier. And the land would be your location for the video game arcade. You might have it, an ideal location might be in a beach community or something like that, something where people are on vacation, they have a lot of time. So you might have a facility at the beach. The capital would include the facility, the game machines, a cash register, and of course, if you decided to broaden the thing to sell food, you might have vending machines. That would probably be a good idea, so people don't leave when they get hungry or thirsty, and instead they spend money at your place. Okay, so that's a video game arcade. What about something like I'm not spelling well, nail salon? So a nail salon Again, you might have a manager on staff. You would have, I don't know what people in the nail salon are called actually. So the people, the manicurists, I guess. Manicurists. Uh, Again, you would have a location, probably the land might be, again, in a strip mall or a place in a shopping mall. So I'll just put a place in the mall. I'm being careful not to describe the facility again, because the facility, the actual building, falls under capital. So the building, and then there might be mirrors, and there are tables, I don't know what you call them, things like that. Again, there would probably be a cash register. And so you can see again how this sort of labor, land, and capital fits in to that. And again, once again, you're going to have materials in this nail salon. They're going to have all sorts of chemicals and nail coloring stuff and all that stuff. That again is materials, and it is presumably produced by labor and capital and land, but it was produced somewhere else, not in the nail salon. So I think I'll leave it at that. Those are our 3 factors of production. Thank you.